Universal Studios and DreamWorks have dropped the first teaser trailer for the live-action remake of How to Train Your Dragon, and have left the internet in, I guess, a collective state of stunned? I haven't really seen people be overly excited, but not also overly negative for this adaptation, and it leaves me wondering, really, why is that? So let's talk about what the strengths and the weaknesses are to this upcoming live-action adaptation of the classic How to Train Your Dragons. Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers, because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. Now, one of the things that everyone needs to understand about any adaptation is that adaptations all come with their own inherent strengths and weaknesses. This goes from books to comics to shows to movies to podcasts, musicals, what have you. All of these different mediums through which people tell stories have things that only they can specifically do. They can bring out certain strengths and elements of any particular story while also not being able to really land some of the other strengths that other mediums have. And in this case, there really is no one medium that is superior to all the others. While I absolutely love books, there's nothing wrong with a great video game, a great musical, a great show, a great movie, a great comic, because a story can still be told beautifully through those mediums. Now, things get a little bit trickier when we consider, taking a cartoon movie and changing it on over into a live action. And when I look at this teaser trailer for How to Train Your Dragon, I'm left really, speechless. To a certain extent, I love what I'm seeing here. And at the same time, I'm also left wondering, why? This looks like an absolute beat-for-beat redo of the original movie, which is absolutely fine, and to a certain extent because that movie was great. But the thing is that if it's a beat-for-beat remake, the question then becomes, why do I need this movie at all? The answer is, I don't. Instead, the studios need this because they are bankrupted for creativity. Oh boy. And if you want a full-blown rant and revelation about what's really going on behind the scenes, then please check out one of the videos I just most recently did. It doesn't matter who is put into the White House or into any other position of power, the problems within Hollywood are far more deep-rooted, deep-seated, and pernicious than you could possibly imagine. So please check out that video and understand that this right here is the product of far greater deep-seated problems. But as creators, we can sit back and say, okay, what's really going on here? Let's have a look at some of these arguments and conversations that are being had. First of all, a live-action adaptation of How to Train Your Dragon, which seems to be leaning more towards a mature teenage audience and adult audience rather than simply to kids, should approach the story slightly differently. Yes, it should hit all of the big moments and everything, all the great conversations that were had in the original, which was intended for more children and family-oriented audiences. In this case, I would like to see a greater emphasis on the world building. I'd love to see more of the dragons, and not just simply in the training area, but let's see dragons in the wild. Let's see just how dangerous they can be. This means we gotta have a little bit more death on screen. And I would like to get a little bit more backstory to Stoic the Vast in this movie, rather than waiting around for the second and third movies, which do a good job of adding on to his legacy and really giving him a full character arc, especially in the second movie, which is just beautiful. But give us more of his character here in this movie. And by bringing Gerard Butler back into the mix, you can't go wrong right here. And I especially like the casting for this movie. Yeah, I know that there's some people who are quibbling about who's playing Astrid, but what I'm going to say is this, is that we've really needed some new young blood on the scene, and I am willing to give all of these new actors and actresses a chance to really prove themselves in a big budget movie. And it's great that we're getting the original director back as well. And some of the stories from on set of just the extras playing around and having fun said that they were treated very respectfully, that there was a lot of joy on set, it was a ton of fun to make, and that they're really excited to see the end product. And so that gives me some hope as well. But again, here's the thing, a live-action adaptation, especially one that is skewing a little bit more mature, needs to really deliver on a lot of the things that a child-oriented movie could not. we need to see the death and destruction. We need to get to know a little bit more about these characters. Be willing to be a little bit more bold and exaggerated and go darker. If you're going to do a live action adaptation, that's what we need. Now, the next argument that I've been seeing is all about the dragons. Now, let's talk about this here real quick. Do you want to have a more realistic, quote-unquote, realistic-looking dragon, or would you rather have a very bankable plushie? If you're like, well, obviously I want the more realistic dragon, the dragons from the House of Dragon look so cool and amazing, let's just take a step back for a moment and remember the Sonic movie. Remember how we were going to get hyper photogenic, realistic Sonic and that whole monstrous mess that was right there? Yeah, everyone's very happy that they went back and redid the entire movie with more cartoonish Sonic. And this is kind of the message that was taken away from what happened with Paramount. Rather than mess around with taking something childish and then trying to make it look more mature and adult, you can keep it childish while putting it into a more mature story. And so we are being saddled with the sellable plushie dragons rather than the more realistic versions of the Night Fury and the other dragons, which would be really cool to see. And that kind of does go against the whole, hey, lean into a little bit more bold and dark. And so thus we see that there's already a problem happening right here. And this is probably one of the reasons why the internet is just kind of collectively stunned, because it looks gorgeous, it looks good, and the music is on point, and we want to see amazing new talent, and Gerard Butler is back, which is all great. But wait, it's very obvious from the look and the tone and the lighting that we're going a little bit darker, so it can't necessarily be for kids. So why would you go with the plushie dragons? But if you didn't go with the plushie dragons, would they be as well received by the people who are the fans of the original, as well as the kids who are most obviously going to go and see this movie? Yeah, suddenly it's like, okay then, well, we're trying to balance everything out right here, and if it's a total one-for-one remake, then why on earth was this even made other than to be a soulless cash grab? Is it really going to add anything to the story? Suffice it to say, we actually really don't have any good solid answers. It's all just guesswork. The teaser trailer is there for us to watch and to enjoy or to criticize. It exists. Universal Studios and DreamWorks are going through with it. Signs seem to point right now towards this being a good live-action adaptation, but we won't know for certain until it's finally released and we get the chance to sit down and watch it. But this really does beg the question, other than the soulless cash grab, is an adaptation like this, well, really needed? And maybe a better question is, really, should we go back? The How to Train Your Dragon franchise isn't that old at all. And sure, the kids have grown up and everything, but those movies are so great that you can easily, as an adult, enjoy them and then pass them on to your own children. Do you really need a more mature version of these movies to sit down and enjoy? Especially if, as an adult, you can sit down and you can realize, recognize, and appreciate the more mature and dark and heavy elements that are already in the trilogy? I really don't think so. From a storyteller's standpoint, unless this movie is again going to be bold and do something new and really expand on the world building, really draw in more details from the books that weren't given to us in the movies, or maybe add in some other things to really help bring out more of the side characters. I would definitely love to see more of Stoic the Vast. There is no reason to do this movie other than, again, because it is a soulless cash grab and because Hollywood is completely bereft of great ingenuity, creativity, and boldness. So as far as I'm concerned, I do want to go and see this movie. I want to see what it has to offer, but I'm not overly excited for it because there are so many things that I just don't know. Is this going to be worth it? Will it be bold enough and mature enough to really warrant what this live action right now, at least according to the teaser trailer, seems to be leaning into, while at the same time contradicting what they've done by bringing in all the great sellable plushy versions of the dragons? I personally feel like the CGI looks good, and I think that they put in enough effort and enough time to make this movie honestly work well, but there is one other big problem with this, and that is the believability of live action versus animation. What I want you to consider is this. Again, the strengths and weaknesses of different adaptation types. When it comes to cartoons, any kind of cartoon, hand-drawn or CGI, cartoons allow you to instantly turn off a certain part of your brain that wants to heavily scrutinize everything. You might still want to do that just because either you're that kind of person or because you find it fun, but the fact of the matter is that most people, once they realize that something is a cartoon, are able to turn off a certain part of their brain and suspend their disbelief even more so than they normally would. Why? Because it's a cartoon. We've been trained to expect that a cartoon is going to break all kinds of expectations, rules of physics, and just so much more. As a result, we are more willing to accept ridiculous scenarios that are given to us. And that allows creators then to create stories and to form scenes that are absolutely beautiful that I have a hard time believing you could get away with in live action. For instance, the test flight scene is amazing. And while there are some real-world physics going on in there, there's a lot of things that are absolutely fantastical. And they could get away with it because you expect that cartoon characters are going to survive certain situations a whole lot easier than their live-action counterparts. I have a very hard time believing that real-life Hiccup is going to survive all of the nonsense that's going to happen to him during his test flights. Yeah, it might not end up looking all that good. It looks fantastic as a cartoon, but it might not look really good in live action because a human body isn't meant to move that way. And once you start putting in all of the special effects onto a human person, if it's not done with the utmost care and creativity and ingenuity, it's going to look really, really silly. Another concern I have is actually for the very beautiful scene at the end of the movie when Hiccup wakes up and realizes he's missing a leg. He and Toothless are both now cripples. And this scene is just absolutely gorgeous because now best friends in a world where they shouldn't be friends get up and support each other and go out to greet a new world. It is so beautiful. Now, here's the thing is that when you try doing that in live action, you're going to be wondering, how did the big dragon get into that very realistic looking house? And how is it that that little human guy is able to work alongside this big dragon without being absolutely squashed? Yes, of course, all Toothless has to do is just stand up and Hiccup has to lean up against him, and then everything is totally fine. But again, the moment that you see anything in live action, you begin to switch your brain on over to assuming that everything is real, and you start scrutinizing things that you don't really need to scrutinize, but you're going to do it instinctually. This is one of the big problems of a live action adaptation for anything cartoonish, is that you have to somehow compensate for all of the ridiculous setup. Even though this is an absolutely beautiful emotional scene, people will be wondering, how does this work? Whereas when it's a cartoon, people don't question, they just accept and are able to feel the emotions of this moment and accept the beautiful character development and friendship between Hiccup and Toothless. So the live action adaptation is actually going to have to do even more work than its original counterpart in order to sell us on the relationship between Hiccup and Toothless and to really bring to life a lot of those amazing iconic scenes. Why? Because a live action person, a very live, real person, could not really exist in any of those situations, even the really beautiful, seemingly simple ones. The one thing, though, from this teaser trailer that I absolutely hate is Hiccup's haircuts. Oh, why? Why? Please kick that thing back 20 years to where it belongs. We do not need this sucker back. Please, just go back to him being a mop head. Please, I'm begging you. I don't know if I can stand watching this whole movie with that haircut. Toothless, please, please burn it off. I will take bald Hiccup over this. Please. If anything, though, casting a very young cast, and hopefully if we do get more movies, I hope that this does well and that it delivers well. I really do. If it delivers well and it does well and we're able to get the second and the third movie, then at the very least, we can move on from this haircut and then we can have longer haired, bearded Hiccup, and I will be very, very happy. So, with that being said, I want to hear everyone else's thoughts on this particular teaser trailer. Again, we're kind of just left wondering to know what's going to happen with the story. But I hope that I've pointed out here a little bit some things to consider in terms of marketability, the strengths and weaknesses of various mediums and adaptations, and hopefully then that helps to better inform your own opinion on what we might be getting in this live action remake. So, let's buckle in and see what's going to happen. And again, I really do hope that this movie does well, that it lands well, and I hope that it's able to justify itself beyond just a simple soulless cash grab and deliver an excellent story that will appeal to a very wide audience and show to us what they're able to do with a live action adaptation. I would really like to see that. But in the meantime, I'm going to go and I'm going to enjoy the originals because they are classics. They are masterpieces in their own right. So with all that being said, thank you so much for joining us on this particular little side quest in the adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.